There's two planes on the table here, both of them that you should know what they are. We've got a smoothing plane, which is the smaller one, and we've got a jack plane, which is the larger one. Smoothing plane you would select if you were planing smaller bits of material. And a jack plane you'd pick if you're planing larger bits of material. Both the planes have the same parts, okay? And the parts that you should maybe be aware of is the bit at the bottom there is called the sole. There's a toe, there's a heel. There is a lever for adjusting the angle of the blade, and there's an adjusting nut for moving the blade backwards and forwards, which dictates how much you're going to plane off the bottom. When you're setting up a plane, it's important that it works properly, it's nice and clean. So at the moment, this one's all clogged, and I would quite like to unclog it before us doing any planing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to release this cam here, right, which loosens this part of the plane, and I can take it off. Okay, and then I can remove this bit, and here's another part of the plane that you should know, and there's two parts here. This bit with the round bit is the cap iron. This bit here, the bottom bit with the blade, is the cutting iron. So we've got a cap iron and a cutting iron. So we can take all the bits apart, and we can clean any of the wood shavings in the plane and get rid of them all. Try not to blow them out because dust goes everywhere. We can have a little look at that, and there should be around about a millimetre or a couple of millimetres between the cap iron and the cutting plane, which means that just allows all the shavings to curl up and get taken out of the plane. To assemble the plane again, okay, so we can use it, I'm going to take the cutting iron, the cap iron, and we're going to pop them in the plane and make sure that's seated in like properly. And then we're going to take this part and we're going to place it over here and slide it in, and then we're going to press down the cam lock to lock it in place, and it's a wee bit loose. So I'm going to take the screwdriver and I'm going to tighten up a little bit, lock it in place. And then what I've got to do is I've got to check it to make sure it's ready for planing. To check a plane before you plane it, okay, what we want to do is we want to check that the blade is sticking up enough out the sole. So we want to look along the sole. I find it easy to shut one eye, and the blade should be sticking out about a paper width, so hardly any blade at all, and it should be straight. If the blade is angled and it's squint, we can take the adjusting lever here and we can press it, and looking at it, and that allows us to make sure the blade is nice and straight. If it's not sticking out enough, we can use the adjusting nut and we can turn it clockwise to make the blade stick out a little bit more, and we can turn it anti-clockwise if we want to make it stick out less. Planing. Okay, when you're planing, what we've got to do is we've checked it by eye, then we've got to test it a little bit just to make sure it's going to plane correctly. Then I'm going to stand properly, I'm going to hold the plane, so I'm going to press the same pressure on one end on the other end to keep it nice and flat. I like to keep my plane at a slight angle so it slices the material rather than cutting it. So I'm going to keep the plane at a slight angle, and then I'm just going to press it forward, and at the moment that's taking off a shaving that's around about a paper width thick, so that's been nicely set up, and I can just press that, and I can use the plane to remove the amount of material that I would like to remove. When you're planing, it's important that you plane in the direction of the grain. So when you look at what I mean is all the lines of the wood there, planing in that direction. Okay, we get a nice smooth plane.